Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone, and we are going to be talking today about a film called Outland. This is a 1981 science fiction movie starring Sean Connery and directed by Peter Hyams. This is we've been doing Babylon 5, and Babylon 5 is unfortunately over. We finished it, so now we're sort of cleansing our palate with an early 80s science fiction film. So Adam, why don't you give us the rundown of the basic plot, and then we can sort of talk about what we thought of it. This was my first time seeing it, and Adam, I think you've seen this one several times. So
I've seen it. I have not seen it since the early '80s when I was about like 10 or 11.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
it was surprising. Some scenes were very vivid in my mind, but the plot I did not remember very well.
Okay.
But yeah, no, this is a Sean Connery movie. He plays William T. O'Neill. He's a marshal assigned to a mining colony on Io. And it's a thoroughly corrupt colony, which he decides he's going to be the man who's going to clean things up. His family abandons him because they're tired of moving from one terrible colony to another. And he has nothing left to lose, so he goes all out with it. And Peter Boyle plays Shepard, who's the general manager of the colony, who is heavily involved in the nefarious goings on there. So what'd you think of this one?
Oh, I liked it. I haven't seen it, and I didn't hear about it actually until you brought it up. I think before we started doing Babylon 5, we had
It was around the same time. We got on the topic just because it's kind of I remember this being set on a space station, not set on a moon, but we kind of got on the things that have a certain level of realism to them based on space station. I'm like, oh yeah, Outland was a great one that I vaguely remembered. And then we said, we'll review it next week. And then we got sucked into Babylon 5 and never did it.
No, I mean, I thought this was a great movie. It's sort of in the tradition of these films where people are locked in a tin can in space. Like so you have a lot of, and it doesn't necessarily have to be space. You even had sort of the traces of the Thing in it. You know what I mean? It's like that, that sort of thing where you have people that have jobs to do and they're trapped in some kind of environment and something is going on that's interesting. And this wasn't anything dire, so like it wasn't like Leviathan level catastrophe. It was a law enforcement guy trying to root out corruption. But the corruption he found was pretty. People were dying as a result of the shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes. It's just that it would have been more controlled chaos than everybody being wiped out.
It could have just gone on and on and on with miners dying regularly, and it would have been miserable. But it's like, if the main character had done nothing, things just would have kept going exactly as they were. It wasn't like things are going to blow up, and it's in a way very low. It's just all personal stakes. Yeah. There's nothing which I like about this movie. I mean, it's
very mundane. It's very mundane, the threat in this one.
And there's no amazing science fictional technology. People just use like shotguns and rifles, and it's all within the solar system. There's no faster than light travel. Even just traveling within the solar system, it takes a year to get to Io, and people have to be frozen. And I'd say the people being frozen is the one, crazy science fictional thing they put in this movie. That's it.
But even there because things are such a baseline level of not being super advanced. So like you have, it's just a practical thing that has to happen so that people can, not be waiting on the ship for a year and presumably wasting all kinds of resources in the process.
It's like early in the movie, you think, well, maybe this thing that they're doing is going to be some weird science fictional gimmick. It's like, no, they're selling amphetamines.
Yeah, that's what they're. That's the thing. So he gets on the ship and immediately, something's off. Like he gets that weird speech from Peter Boyle's character, and what's the other guy's name? Montone. He's sort of the sergeant who I guess is technically O'Neill's subordinate when he arrives, right? Like he's the guy that is in charge of the other law enforcement people, and that guy kind of has these dodgy looks in his eyes as the speech is going on, and you just don't know who you're supposed to trust. And then and you think, oh, maybe there's like some really big grand science fiction thing going on here, and like you said, then like you slowly realize, oh, it's just like I mean, it's a synthetic amphetamine. It's a little bit, it's nothing that you wouldn't see in like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie set in the present. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's I think the only difference is they have some really high tech delivery system for injecting it.
Yeah, you need the fancy injector for
And
drugs in a science fiction movie, definitely.
and it's not, it's like a bright, it looks like a B12 shot. It's like bright red.
Yeah. It does.
And
Yeah, I mean it's everything is very grounded in this movie. I mean it's a 1981 movie, so like, from a period perspective, it's a 70s movie. You can
Yeah.
think of this as being a 70s science fiction movie when you watch it, not an 80s science fiction movie.
I do want to say I think the effects aged very well. I was
Yeah.
because you said it, 1981 obscure Sean Connery movie that I hadn't heard of, and granted, I probably should have heard of this movie. I'm surprised I hadn't. But I usually when a movie is that off my radar, the effects are not going to be staggering when I go see it. It might be a great film, but I'm not expecting to be blown away by the effects. And I was pretty impressed with most of the effects in it. There were a couple towards the end with the ship that maybe weren't as great as some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
But the way that they painted the planet, the way that they painted the space station, the way they did, and the use of practical effects, I was more immersed in this setting than I've been in like any science fiction movie that's come out in the past, 10 years. And I think it was because of like stuff you feel like you can. It was very good use of stuff that looked like the people in the film could touch.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a real place.
Yeah,
You kind of by the point it pays off by the end of the movie when you have the big cat and mouse scene that you've been living in this place for a while and you kind of have a feel for it to an extent. Now
Yeah.
that's rewarded.
It feels stable. It feels like if they go to this place in the movie, it's going to be the same every time. It's rooted in some kind of real geography, and
Hmm.
and one of the things I find with CG effects is it's not those tend to. I don't know. It depends on the movie, obviously, but a lot of times one of the problems I have is the geography doesn't feel stable. It feels like they can adjust it
Yeah.
as needed to the moment, and this felt like, well, we got this one set, and the set's always going to look this way, and we have and all the sort of various effects we used are going to be, it just felt solid, but it was good because I've seen a lot of movies from this period that do not age well, that where you can see mega amounts of green screen sort of edges and various other things that sometimes the practical effects aren't good at. And
Yeah.
and this was one that it was all pretty seamless, I thought. And I think part of it was just where they chose to use it. I think that they were making wise decisions with their budget.
Yeah.
I don't know how big the budget was on this movie, but I never felt budget strain when I was watching it.
No, it's very well put together, and it feels to me in a lot of ways. One of the biggest cliches you'd see like watching science fiction movies in the 80s and even into the 90s was movies that were ripping off Alien, and it's like this feels like it's a movie influenced by Alien, but it's not taking the monster movie plot. There's no
Yeah.
monster movie plot. It's just taking the aesthetic of, hey, here's these blue collar people in space, and living in space is really really unpleasant and kind of cramped and terrible, and it's just taking the element that nobody else took and is actually, I think, one of the most interesting things about Alien, and running with it.
Yeah,
But,
no, yeah, because that's the part. Because the part of Alien that it reminds me of are the times that the crew are sort of interacting with each other over their meals or dealing with like a technical issue. Is
Yeah.
that kind of that it's the I don't know, the part of science fiction that I really like, which is again when I first saw it, it reminded me of something like 2001 or or Alien or with a little bit of Dark Crystal for some reason. Something about the Jerry Goldsmith music that
Oh,
was
okay.
was
Yeah.
very reminiscent of the Dark Crystal. I don't know why, and I know that Jerry Goldsmith didn't do the Dark Crystal music, but it just kind of reminded me of that. So, but what I'm trying to say is, I had a real sense that I was in a place and I felt like it was like going to another world. And with the alien stuff, the part that I like about Alien and Aliens is the world that they transport you to. And so it was just, I don't know, once it got me there, I was very open to the rest of the plot. And so
yeah. And another thing I like about this movie is that they don't set O'Neill up as being this like superhero. It's like he's not it's like they make a point, at one point he's chasing, I think it was Spoda, I think. One of the two guys he was chasing as the lead. He's kind of chasing him through the station. And they just have O'Neill totally trying to jump between these, one balcony to another. He just totally stumbles and falls to the next level and has to kind of clamber up again and gets behind everything. And it was just a way of saying, this guy isn't an action hero. He's just this dude who's a marshal. I mean, that really kind of hammered it home when it just created this, is he going to win? It created this big uncertainty. He wasn't, because I mean, you could have done this movie and had the main character be just, I'm this guy who's going to take everyone on and I'm going to win, and it would be a lot less suspenseful than the fact that they did make him flawed in that respect.
Yeah, no, he was a very great. I mean, in fact, I was impressed with the human drama of the character, where they start him out and you're like, oh, he's got a nice, happy family. You're almost even like a little bit jealous of the family that he has. It seems a little too idyllic. And then he comes home and his wife has left him, and it's sort of a, I don't know. He wasn't a character that strained disbelief in any way. He felt like a real guy, and he definitely he got into some real dramatic territory and some real action heavy territory by the end. But it was sort of, a lot of what was going on seemed to be a natural product of the drama going on at home with him. And so he was maybe just going a little bit further than he would have normally gone, because of the stresses that he was dealing with the wife and the kid. And and so it was believable. I could believe somebody would get to that, be willing to sort of risk that much.
If the wife had stuck around, there's no way he would have pushed things that far. But yeah, he just, it really, and I mean, and it's not. I was kind of glad they didn't belabor any peril with the wife and kid too, because at one point I was thinking late in the movie, I'm like, oh, the guys that Peter Boyle's character is getting his drugs from are on the space station, and the wife and kids are on the space station. Are they gonna do something with that? But no, they didn't.
Yeah, I was like, okay, the wife and kids are gonna blow up on their way home or something. And and they didn't do that. They also didn't have spoilers. I'm going to talk about the end, but I think it's important. He gets back with the wife. She buys what I like is the wife is not. She's not like in a lot of these movies. The wife will leave. And that's it. They might have had 20 or 30 years together. Doesn't matter. She's gone. And this felt more realistic. This was like how when you see divorces in real life, this is how they seem to be. It's not usually like a clean break like it is in the movies. And this felt like, okay, she left him, but then she left him a door and said, hey, I got 3 tickets. Why don't you just come home with us? Because the core issue was she didn't want to drag the son around to all these different posts that he has to go to. And
he'd never been on Earth, and she said he spent his entire life on crappy places like that. It's like I sympathized with the wife. It wasn't the she left our hero kind of thing. It was like, yeah, she's got a good point, but I could see why he didn't want to leave his job. It was a very complex, grounded issue for it to have in the background of the movie.
And even their argument, it was very reasonable because usually in these movies, the significant other is going to be somebody that you don't like. They're going to be berating the main character and telling them how terrible we're. And she was not only making reasonable points, she was making them in a very tender way to him. And she wasn't trying to destroy him. She was just conflicted by the situation they were in. So I don't know. I thought it was all of the characters felt pretty believable to me, and I think. Even in the stuff involving the amphetamine sort of plot that was going on, the Peter Boyle character, I bought that guy Like that was a totally viable
That
bad guy,
was
and
yeah.
he wasn't even that bad. Like if Sean Connery's character O'Neill had just been willing to work with him, things would have been fine. Like the guy would have let a lot of stuff go. It wasn't like, again, in a lot of movies, the bad guy's going to get you no matter what you do. But in this one, the bad guy went after him because Sean Connery made choices that turned the bad guy against him.
He gave him every chance. Oh, I see your hero act. You want a bigger cut. You want a big payoff. No problem. I'm happy to work with you.
and it was interesting. The other thing about the movie too is it's interesting because it's a moral situation where really, I mean, Sean Connery's character is taking a suicidal position. Like this is he wants to be the good guy, but in the universe he lives in, being the good guy, you die because the corporation controls the mind. The corporation is happy making, like this. It's pretty clear this conspiracy goes all the way up to who knows who, and to the point that they're able to send a bunch of hitmen after him, and so he survives by almost by sheer luck by the end of it, but again, it's an interesting kind of movie. There's another movie I saw the other day called What Price Honesty, and I'll talk about that in another podcast. But it gets into similar thematic territory, and I feel like it's interesting because in a film like this, you're sort of forced to ask yourself, what would I do in that situation? And most movies make it very easy to join the hero on his quest for heroics. Do you know what I mean? Like it's usually like it's not that like, oh yeah, I would clearly do what Sean Connery. In this movie, I at a lot of points, if you're honest with yourself, I think you would probably not be happy with the true answer, because I don't think most people would go to the extent that he did, being a hero. And so it makes the character even more, I don't know, more impressive by the end. I think it's because
it's interesting because it is. I mean, it's heroic, but it's also kind of crazy at the same time. I had mixed feelings. Like in the middle of the movie, there's points I'm going, man, you're just being nuts. This is barely even heroism at this point.
Well, because you're thinking like, well, like say you succeed, they're just going to replace you with somebody else. They're going to, you're not going to be the marshal next time. Like it's just, it's because I mean, it was an interesting plot because the idea is they're using these amphetamines that were like, I guess they were recently made, and the military had tested them, and what they had found was it made people psychotic after like 12 months. Which I really liked, because it wasn't like this thing that made you instantly psychotic, and not everybody had the same kind of breakdown. But as you can imagine, in that environment, psychotic breakdowns are like the worst thing. You have people that are just exposing themselves to the
vacuum.
The vacuum.
A lot of explosive decompression in this movie.
Yeah. You have people making really questionable choices in these psychotic states. But I don't know. But the reason they're doing it is because it's increasing productivity, and I think we even know the numbers of dead each month as a result of this. When he's talking to the doctor, he says like, oh, you've had like 67 fatalities or something, in the past 6 months, and then she's like, yeah, but and then I think he asked what it was in the 6 months before that, and it was like 50 something, and then she's like, yeah, but do you want to know what it was the 6 months prior to that? And it was like 2. So it's a massive increase in fatalities, but not something they can't weather over the long haul if they're willing to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the thing I liked is that they have a 1-year term on there. People ship out there for a year to work there, and they go back, which means they're playing the odds. It's like this amphetamine's going to drive you crazy after about a year. So it's like, hey, most of the time the person's going to go crazy after they leave my station. It's not going to be my problem, So
and we don't know what the actual numbers are in terms of how many people go crazy from using it. But
and how many people like end up killing themselves or something, like 13 months later, once they've left the station.
But it's more like but again, the catastrophic stuff that is resulting is all happening. It's sort of like, it's like creating like a long-term social issue when they get back to Earth. It's sort of like an Agent Orange type situation. It's not like something, or like a PTSD type thing. It's not Alien or Leviathan level catastrophe, and but they're still making good use of that environment. Because one of the things I was asking, I was like, you know what, this plot could be set in Los Angeles or in anywhere. Yeah. It's not something that couldn't happen on Earth. I like that about the plot.
To go with something more recent to the time the movie was made, it's like soldiers coming back from the Vietnam War being addicted to heroin. That's what it's like.
And it's that sort of thing. And so, but what I was asking myself is, well, okay, why does this movie need to be in space then? And is it adding anything? And what I decided, at least on my first viewing, was it was absolutely necessary, because what they were trying to do was create that sense of isolation that the Sean Connery character had. And you can't do that in the modern world without, sending somebody to the North Pole or advancing the timeline a few years and sending them to Jupiter. Or actually Io.
Io, yeah. Well, but I liked too the opening text on the screen, where they lay out the fact, that it's like 70 hours travel from the space station to Io. And there's a weekly shuttle. It kind of sets all that stuff to give you the feeling of isolation. And of course and then later you get that countdown when the hitmen are being sent. He knows the hitmen are being sent, and he knows they've got like 70 hours before the next shuttle arrives, and it just gives this preparation time and tension before they actually get there.
No, that's one of the reasons why I really want to watch this again, because I know that those little details are going to really jump out at me when I watch it for a second time, and understand that, because when that flashed across the screen, I was like, that seems important, but I don't know why yet. And so this is a movie I'm really looking forward to watching this one again. I'm in a way, I'm glad I never saw it before, because I can never recapture the magic of those first few viewings of 2001. But I feel like I have a movie like that I can enjoy for at least the first few viewings. And then maybe I'll break it out every once in a while. But I guess also we should probably talk about some of the characters and the actors involved. I mean, obviously Sean Connery. Growing up in the 80s, this is a very comfortable terrain for Sean Connery to be occupying, I think. I thought he worked really well in the role. I felt nostalgic for a lot of the roles I had seen him in. This felt like a lot of other Sean Connery movies in a lot of ways. But I also thought that this was again, like a more genuine character.
He was really giving a good performance in this movie. He had his heart into this role, because Sean Connery movies, it varies. There's varying amount of effort that goes into some, rather than others. But he cared when he was making this movie, and it pays off.
And he didn't have to, because it's a space movie. And I mean, let's be honest, a lot of time actors don't feel like they have to care about a space movie, especially an actor like Sean. Like Sean Connery's the kind of actor you think, he might just think, I'm in a stupid space movie. I'm not, And in this one, like the scene when he's talking to his son, that was like a very believable scene. And again, it was sort of Sean Connery. When Sean Connery is kind of a man's man, and so when he shows that amount of vulnerability in a character, it's effective. So I thought that was interesting. But for me, the standout in this movie is Peter Boyle.
Fantastic.
Peter Boyle, like he's totally believable. I mean, you've met this guy. Like, everybody's met this guy at their job or some, like, he's somebody who, like, he's achieved like a lot of success and wealth, but you feel like it's maybe not by not because he's talented. Do you know what I mean? Because he looks like a slob. The guy does not like he like, they really highlight how slovenly he is as a person. And unkempt, and he plays golf all day on his he's got
his Wii.
He's got his Nintendo Wii, and though I think there were video games like that. He's playing
Oh yeah.
It's a golf ball. Like he hits a golf ball into a screen, and then the screen projects where the golf ball goes. And I seem to recall those being something like that being a thing. Though maybe I'm just misremembering.
No, there were things like that. You see them like in the arcades sometimes. Those kind of like booth things with the golf, which I never played one. I was those were, but I remember them existing.
In fact, I'll say the only thing that really doesn't hold up in terms of effects in this movie for me was the golf felt kind of like something from the 80s or the 90s, and the keyboards and the computers felt very old fashioned. But that's sort of to be expected.
I like that aesthetic anyway. It's like, it's anachronistic, but I love that kind of anachronism.
You instantly remember typing on those really sort of thick keyboard keys, and the sounds they make are just they're different from modern keyboards. And
I have a mechanical keyboard on my computer here because I like that. That's just I still use that kind of keyboard.
All right, so I don't need to sell you on this idea.
No.
But I thought he was a great villain, and I love that he's not like concealing. Like right from the beginning, he pretty much declares himself the villain of the movie. Like, it's either him or the sergeant, and then the rest of the movie, you're sort of waiting to find out who the mole is, and it's either the doctor or the new sergeant. Do you know what I mean? So it's never they're never like really pulling the wool over your eyes or acting like they've deceived you. They're sort of like you have two options, and who do you think it is? And so,
I like that they crack the whole mystery of the amphetamine thing very early in the movie too. Like a lot of movies would have been like, the mystery of this drug gets brought out like 3/4 of the way through the movie. But I think it's like you're maybe a third of the way into the movie when the doctor kind of goes, oh yeah, it's the synthetic amphetamine, and from there on, it all becomes character drama. Like the rest of the movie is just what choices is he going to make. They don't try and make the whole drug plot line into a huge mystery. It's just about what are people going to do.
Well, and what's good about it too is like a lot of movies will have 5 or 6 potential characters that you have to sort of worry about being the bad guy or being, you know what I mean? You have to sort of like say, who is it? And the downside of having 5 or 6 guys is you cannot get too deep into the characters. They all sort of have to be fairly rough sketch, veneers of people, and it's never, there's nothing to unravel. But here you had this, so like in the later portion of the movie, you had the doctor. I think her name was Lazarus, which right away it's sort of like it kind of gets your your antennae up, like maybe I should keep an eye on this person. And they also had the new Sergeant Ballard. Those are the two people that that there's somebody on the inside who's going to be helping the bad guy to kill O'Neill. But you don't know who it is. And both of them are giving you enough reasons to think it might be them, but enough reasons to think it might not be them. And they're also fleshed out enough, especially the doctor, that you feel like you can sort of maybe almost understand their motivations. I found it very fun to sort of wonder, okay, is she really being sincere to him right now, or is she just playing a long game where she's gonna she's just gonna stab him in the back or something, or put poison on him when she tries to stitch up his wound. Like what's the and I think they even played into that a little bit because he kept kind of rubbing his arm and he looked a little bit woozy at the end. I was like, well, is he woozy because of the fall, or is he woozy because she put poison on him when she stopped the bleeding, and so it was they got a lot of good character development that really added to the tension, and also kind of made you say like, oh no, please don't be this character. I want this character to be like a good guy so.
Yeah, I wasn't actually suspicious of the doctor, I have to admit. I don't know. I just kind of figured she was what she was. I mean, she just didn't seem. She had her doctor's position, and she just seemed kind of isolated enough from the infrastructure of the station that it didn't really feel like she had a stake in the whole. I mean, she gave herself a stake by getting involved, but
that's what made me suspicious, is that she shows up. And, do you know what I mean? And
her showing up was suspicious. Now you mention it,
but also like he's like, I've got somebody on the, like he tells you, I've got somebody on the inside that'll make sure it happens. then I'm thinking like, okay, there's only two people, unless like it's going to be a no-name person, like a guy in the background that
Yeah.
ooh, but it's either her or the sergeant. Those are the only two people it could be, and so the sergeant just I think because he was newer, I was like, well, the big surprise would be if it's that doctor, and then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, well, she's grumpy enough and like unpleasant enough that they could turn her into a villain really quickly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just like on a dime, she could become the bad guy. And then she had the whole scene in the racquetball court where she's like, hey, do you want to go get drunk? And like, it's like, that's probably the worst thing he could do as he's, waiting for these...
He had 20 hours at that point. Plenty of time to recover.
He had 20 hours, but I mean, again, we're talking like a life and death scenario where he probably wants every drop of alcohol out of his system.
He can handle his alcohol.
I don't know.
No, I agree. I was thinking it wasn't the wisest choice, but this movie is not about making wise choices.
No, it's not. It's not. And it was a believable decision on the Sean Connery character's part. But what's not believable is that a doctor would encourage it.
I took that as her being, because that's how do you think she ended up out there?
No, that's reasonable. But what I was thinking, they've she's the plant. She's the one that's like, and it makes sense because she's obviously a capable doctor. There must be something nefarious going on with this woman that would have resulted in her being here.
Alcoholism.
Yeah. That does explain it. But I thought it could have been something,
Yeah, no, it's a reasonable suspicion as the movie moves forward. My question, because I watched this in the early '80s, and I had memories of the setting. I had memories of the explosive decompression at the beginning, but I didn't remember any of the plot details, and so I didn't know how it was going to wrap up at the end. And and Ballard, the sergeant, who's played by Clark Peters from The Wire, actually, but so he was
good. The guy that played the sergeant was really good, and he was an interesting character because.
Well, the new sergeant I'm referring to too, by the way, not the first sergeant. But,
okay.
But the first sergeant
who played the first
role.
sergeant?
James Sicking. I think I might be butchering the pronunciation of his last name.
I feel like I've seen him in a lot of movies. Was he on like Doogie Howser or something?
I don't know.
He was. He was the dad on Doogie Howser. That's where I recognize him.
Okay. I never watched that, so that's why
you don't know what you're missing.
Hey.
But
he was very familiar to me, even though I hadn't watched that. He's probably one of those things where I've seen him in a million small parts in other movies, and he's in a lot of things.
The beard's really obscure stuff, but the other sergeant was really good too. Like again, he comes in later in the movie, so he doesn't get as sketched out as much as the other guys. But I found So in the end, he ends up being the guy that is on the inside. But what I found interesting was he has this moment where O'Neill asks him, like, who can I trust? And like he's like, well, they don't want to die. And then he's like, well, what about you? And in a normal movie, the guy that's the plant is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm 100% behind you. Do you know what I mean? But he was a smart plant. He was like, oh well, if I do that, he basically got Sean Connery to trust him by showing that he wasn't on his side 100%, that he was just motivated by, what everybody else is motivated by, self-preservation. And so I thought that was a clever...
Keeping my head down.
Yeah.
Well, I like that about the movie too. It's like, pretty much everyone's motivation aside from Sean Connery is just... and ultimately the doctor is just, I just want to get through the day. That's really all I want. That's it. I just want to collect my paycheck and still be around tomorrow. That's all I want.
Even the Peter Boyle character, he just wants to be playing golf in that office. He doesn't want to be dealing with he just wants this problem to, whatever it takes, he'll try to make Sean Connery happy. And
I like the way the movie, about 2/3 of the way through creates the situation where his boss is like, look, if this doesn't work out, the next hitmen are coming for you, which meant that it wasn't a case where the villain's at the top and the he's trying to, he's in this position of power until the final thing where the hero takes him out. It's like they're both in huge peril at the end there. It's a stressful situation for both of them.
Yeah, and there is no like Sean Connery doesn't fix anything by doing what he
No.
does. I mean, we can assume the Peter Boyle character gets killed, and then a new manager takes his place, and they're still going to be having amphetamines on the ship. Sean Connery's not there to stop him.
Yeah, him leaving at the end. It's nice that he went back to his family and all, but you're basically going, I'm not going to make sure this mess gets cleaned up. I've made my heroic stand. I proved something to myself. I'm going to go home now.
But that's all it's about. It's not,
Yeah.
Again, he's because I think even Sean Connery realizes he's not going to stop this. Like unless he can find the men that the guy is dealing with. Like what is he going to do? You know what I mean? He's not going to
Yeah.
ninja his way into the upper echelons of this corporation and start taking people out. So
Yeah, it's not a Schwarzenegger
Yeah.
movie, but
Yeah. So I think so the only thing he can do is he can get the current bad guy. That's about the best he can hope for. But end result, nothing changes. In fact, arguably, more people are harmed by the heroics than if he
True.
just left.
Yeah. Well, my suspense, like I said, I wasn't suspicious of the doctor like you were. My suspense near the end was I was wondering, okay, it's clearly going to be the sergeant, but is it going to be a case of the sergeant backstabs him at the end, or is it going to be one of those cases where the sergeant's in a position to backstab, but he decides he's going to become a good guy at the last moment? That was like my suspicion, but. Yeah, once there was the scene with the second sergeant and the doctor, and he's like, "Oh, where do you think he is?" And she's like, "Oh, by the greenhouse." I'm like, "Okay, he's just going to be a bad guy. That's it."
But yeah, so I don't know. I thought it was a fun movie. And it was and it created an interesting world. I like the environment they manufactured here. The way that the place was set up was distinct looking.
Yeah.
It was familiar. Like if you've seen a lot of these kind of movies in tin can and space films, it's reminiscent of them. But some of the stuff was pretty interesting, like the barracks situation. Where
Yeah.
it was like everybody lived in they were kind of like cages, but they made sense because we know that they're using recycled sort of ventilation systems that are not recycled, but like it's kind of like an airplane type ventilation system is what I got out of it. And they, you can't have people in individual sealed off cubbies because the air isn't going to flow. And so I was imagining, that's going to be great for the airflow on this place, like because it's all just like mesh, and so the air can just penetrate into everybody. Obviously stuff can fall on you from people above you. That would be horrible, but you're going to be getting plenty of fresh air. So even their privacy blinds, when you look at them, they're porous, so it looks like air can get through. And I feel like that was intentional.
Yeah. I mean, it's a notable thing is like being a teenager in the '80s, so many low budget science fiction movies had these industrial settings, and it's like I got so tired of scenes that looked like they were in warehouses or factories or had this industrial feel. But this is like really nicely constructed sets, and it is an industrial setting, but it felt really compelling in a way that most movies in the '80s utterly failed at when they were for kind of an industrial setting.
Yeah, it felt just lived in enough. It felt so. A lot of times the grime is too heavy, or there's not enough of it, and and the places don't look like real places that you've ever seen. It's like, who thought of this design? But this felt like, I mean, any time you've been sort of herded into a building for any kind of reason where things are happening and people are working or going to school or whatever, it just had that kind of it was a very sort of functional environment that felt like, somebody would make this for this purpose. And I just thought that the grime level was exactly like, it looked exactly like I would expect it to look if it were a real place in the real world. Like the suits that everybody was wearing, they weren't too dirty, but they weren't too clean either. And the equipment was tarnished, but it wasn't like ridiculous.
Yeah, the costumes were worn. They were like it's not like everyone was walking around with filth on them, but they looked like they'd been working in these outfits. It's I think the budget had to have been decent on this movie, not knowing what it was, just because a lot of care went into the sets and the direction on this. And I mean, it is a very nice looking movie. It's very polished. So
it was an $8 million budget, it says,
which was pretty good for the time. Yeah, I'm saying I don't know, for the time that was that $8 million was a lot more back then. For
18 million.
18 million. Oh yeah, that's a very good budget.
But you want to know how much it made, according to Wikipedia again?
I know this movie wasn't a huge success.
It was $17,374,595, or $20,000. Or 20 million.
Yeah, and it's a shame because it's the one post Aliens movie that took that kind of compelling setting idea and ran with it, and it bombed. And it's like, I kind of wish there was a world where this had been at least a moderate success and we'd gotten more movies like this. But
I mean, I don't know what the reason was. I know that it got mixed reviews, so maybe that was part of it. But I have to wonder if the title might have been an influence, because it's an easy title to overlook. Like when you and I kept changing the title after you told me about it in my own head. I kept calling it Outlander, probably because of Highlander.
There's also Outlander, the book series, which is a current very popular TV series on cable now. So I've been bracing myself, because I hear people talk about Outlander all the time. I've been bracing myself for this podcast, going, don't call it Outlander, because that's in your head all the time. But I don't know. I don't know what. I was too young to really be conscious of it. I don't even remember it being in the theaters. I saw it when it was on HBO, and it's a movie that, I was young enough that I wouldn't say I loved it at the time, but it really stuck with me, because it was kind of slow for my tastes at being about 10 years old, but I found it really compelling, and a lot of the imagery from this movie has stuck with me all these years later.
Well, I'm looking at the poster for it now, and I think that if that was the marketing, I can sort of see how it might not that's not. I would not assume that is the for the movie that we just watched.
Yeah, that's not a.
I wouldn't see that on a shelf and be like, I have to see that movie necessarily. It's the kind of movie I would only see if somebody said, hey, that's a good movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, actually, are you looking at the one that's him holding the shotgun?
Yeah, the one of him holding the shotgun.
Here's. I don't think that's the actual poster. I think that's like the videotape cover.
Oh, okay.
I think the poster is. Let's see. We're now doing visual stuff that nobody can see. Maybe we should link this.
We should describe it.
Yeah, there's one of them in a spacesuit here. Let me give you a link here, and we can. Let's see. Image address.
Yeah, because the image that that I'm looking at now is just him holding a shotgun with a lot of shadow around him. And there's no indication that it's a science fiction movie except for the glow in the logo. Oh, I see. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Yeah, so the other one you're sending me looks much more like a space movie. But I don't know. Who knows why it didn't do well? I'm sure that there's plenty of reasons. But
honestly, I'm sure a lot of people find it boring. It's sad but true. I found it really engaging, but I can see a lot of people going, "This movie's so slow. Why are there no aliens in it?"
Well, that's true. I think the thing I liked about it was how slow it was. So
yeah, I agree. It gave you a good enough setting. You could just drink it in during the. It was just very engaging. I liked the police work in it. Felt pretty plausible, and yeah, I don't know. It's one of those movies. I get people not liking it. It's just the way people are. They want more action in their movies a lot of the time.
And this is a very old style action climax. It's not the kind of climax you would tend to get these days. And even back then, it was probably pretty old fashioned the way it was done. So,
yeah.
But I don't know. To me, it felt like the ending of like a Clint Eastwood movie or something, or like a I don't know. It was a lot of people sort of crawling around, moving, trying to get into position to hurt each other in some way, and so they were kind of moving in real time. But the thing I liked about that scene was how well it was shot too. Like there were these magnificent reds and greens, as he's going through the different sections of, it's all like, I think at one point he's at a greenhouse and it just looked really spectacular, and the aesthetics of the final shots were quite good, even though it. Normally I feel like that sort of action would have been happening in sort of like slick pavement type settings, sort of like in an urban environment.
And the doctor going around sealing the doors too. That was pretty tense because I'm like, man, if there's any character they're going to be willing to kill off, it's going to be her.
Unless she's the inside mole, unless she's...
exactly. But I had faith in her. I believed in her. I'm not as cynical as you, but
well, I was just trying to think, who can they pull? Like, who's, you kind of look for the obvious choice, like who?
Oh yeah. I'm not. Yeah, I just my I don't know, for whatever reason I just didn't suspect her. I would have been shocked if they'd pulled that reveal.
So we're coming up on the 45-minute mark. So I'm going to end it here, unless you have anything you wanted to add to the discussion, or.
I think I've said all my major points here. Yeah, I feel satisfied.
And so again, the movie is Outland. It's a 1981 science fiction movie. I think it's British, right? It was made in. Was this an English production? Was this?
I have no idea. I did no real research on the production of this before.
Everybody pretty much has an American accent, I think, in the movie, but I think it is a UK production. And
the Lad Company made it. Let's see.
And Peter Hyams made it, who also made 2010, which is probably why I was drawing those 2001 comparisons. But again, I thought it was a fun movie. I think if you like sort of the sort of gritty, dark 80s science fiction, you might enjoy this one. I think it holds up over the years. It is a bit slow paced. We should warn people, this is not, you're not going to break your neck watching this movie by any stretch of the imagination. But if you don't mind sort of just sinking into a film and enjoying it at its own pace, I think it's a good. This is definitely a movie I'm going to like bring up to my dad. He likes movies like this, and I think that it would be a good one to watch with him. So I'm intending to watch it again, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. And we'll be back on. We don't know if we're going to be back on Sunday or Wednesday, depending on what our schedules are. But we're going to start doing the Return of Condor Heroes 2006 television series. And again, I know that folks that are listening to the Outland episode and the Babylon 5 episodes, they might not know what that is. So it's a wuxia novel written by Louis Cha, and it's a really significant one. It's one of these ones that like everybody in China knows. It's sort of it's constantly made into TV shows and movies, and the books are outstanding, and it's the second part in a trilogy, and it's where the idea of the one-armed swordsman character originates from the Shaw Brothers classic film by Chang Che. So it's an important story, and we're going to do the 2006 version because I happen to like this version, but also the actress in that one was hired to play Mulan by Disney, which is not a choice without controversy, I will say. She is not universally praised for her acting, but I think as Zhao Long knew, she does a very good job, and I think it's a good version of the story. So we'll be on either Sunday or Wednesday to talk about that. And this Friday we're going to do Yes, Madam, which is an 80s action movie starring Michelle Yeoh. and I'm sure we have other stuff lined up, but there's so much that I just can't even remember. So we'll be back on, and we will talk to you later.